Yes, parental choice. I mean, first of all, we know that too often it's school choice of parents, not parents' choice of school. Secondly, we know that, I mean, parents and their children choose schools for a whole range of reasons, but we also know that there is a strong class factor at work. This has been just given an example of. And it's very difficult, selection by Volvo, somebody's called it, because middle-class parents are more likely to know how to play the system and to have the resources like time and a car in order to, if necessary, take their kids to schools further away. A solution is to reinstate geographical catchment areas, but then you get residential segregation, which is also a class thing. We know that the advantages, that there are big advantages of having socially mixed intakes in schools. If you get a range of ability in the school, it means that the kids who are most able academically continue to do well, but it raises the standards of those other kids as well. So that's what we should aim at. How we do it, I think, is a matter for debate. I know, for example, in Brighton and Hove, they've experimented with a lottery system, and that's one that's used in the States in some areas. I think that's one of those issues where we need a deeper debate, both within the Green Party and across the political spectrum, and also within the trade unions. But clearly we have to find ways of restricting the way that parental choice works to reinforce class privileges.
Thanks, Richard. We've got just under 15 minutes left, so I'm going to be belatedly strict. So we're going to take another round of questions, and then panellists are only going to be able to answer one of the questions, and they're only going to have 1 minute to give their answer. So we'll go over here, and we've got the gentleman, the lady, and the lady with the white hair on the other side as well.
Graham Hutton from Nottingham. I just wondered if one possible solution to that last problem, class is the rotation of teachers between the schools. So the teachers are moved between schools rather than parents fighting to get the children to different schools.
It's another
Speak up.
Sorry. It's another question about the class issue. It's great that we're talking about academies and free schools and wanting to address those issues. But what hasn't been mentioned is private schools, except in the context of Finland and the negative impact that the proliferation of private schools is having there. It's something that really concerns me because it's a huge factor in the division in our society. Even in Parliament, the great majority of ministers and MPs have been privately educated. I think we really need to address this issue, and I know that the Green Party is going to offer the opportunity for private schools to opt into the state education system, but you're not going to compel it. And I just wondered if that's something that we ought to start talking about more seriously, if we really want to address the inequalities in the education that children receive. And also, it would help other children in state schools, the children that are now going to private schools, were in those schools to hold those standards as well.
Okay,
and the parents of
thank you.
those children.
Thank you. Could you pass the microphone to the lady?
I'd like to ask what the NUT policy is on encouraging schools to do more about preventing FGM, that's female genital mutilation.
Richard, do you want to go first? You pick your question.
Oh, I can only answer on one, can't I? Right, okay. On that, I mean, this is an absolutely vital issue but it's one of a whole range of issues to do with safeguarding, the whole issue of prevent that's come to the fore over the Trojan horse issue and so forth. And I have two, I mean, it's absolutely crucial that schools take these up, but I have three concerns. The first is that the decimation of local authority support teams that actually used to play a key role in ensuring that schools tackled these and had the expertise to do so and could provide training and so forth. We've seen that over, for example, teenage pregnancies, and the team in Birmingham, and again, has been decimated. I'm sure it's the picture around the country. The second issue is to do with the curriculum and the fact that the space for tackling all these sorts of issues, which are all part of a much wider issue around citizenship education and so forth, have been so squeezed out, particularly in secondary schools, by the pressure of exams. And my third point, you'll have to wait for, because I've got to give the microphone to somebody else.
Okay, I haven't got much time, but I'm just going to very briefly pick up the private school question. And it's probably useful for history because there's probably not many people in this room who were here. I think it was about 2009, sorry, it wasn't that old, 2009, that we last had a big debate of education policy. And it was an extremely tight vote about whether Green Party policy would be to ban private schools or to have policy we have now, which is basically to say to take away all financial support from them. They're not charities, they shouldn't have charitable status in terms of tax breaks and all the rest of it. It was a very tight run thing. For those who've just been in the session this morning, it was actually a card vote. There were several card votes. It was very heated, very hot. But basically, there was a feeling, and this was, I think, a political decision by conference, that we're often accused of wanting to ban everything and stop everything and hold everything. And so, although there was a lot of sympathy with the idea of banning public schools, what was decided was that rather than putting down that absolute prohibition, there would be to remove all of the privileges that you could possibly remove. Now, there's an argument for saying that what would happen is quite a lot of the less the private schools with less privileged parents, lots of them would come into the general system. Eton wouldn't, and Eton would continue as it is now, and that's obviously a bad thing. But there is a political decision in there, and that was the political call that conference made at the time. And so I think that's useful to explain sort of why and how we got to where we are. It's a tough one. We've got to decide how radical to be, and that's the call.
Okay. Rotation of teachers. I have no idea is the quick answer. I think it's very good to think out of the box at times and then find out, does anywhere else do this? What's the impact and so on? And I think that's typical for me of Green Party thinking, that it's not just same old, same old. So my honest answer is I don't know what would happen. Now, you can think of all these things that might be wrong with it, but also how good. Our teacher, one of the two teaching schools in Warwickshire, which is my home county for teaching, so who advise all the other teachers, is a selective boys' grammar school. Now, I would love to see some of their teachers in a class with some of the Year 9 girls that I've taught, who are an education in themselves for me. Okay, and I just think it would stop us being complacent that because you teach in a grammar school and you teach at A level, that you're a good teacher. Being a good teacher has many facets to it. So I think out of the box thinking, don't be afraid to raise these ideas, and then our job should be to go away and look at them.
We're going to take one final quick round. So we've got the gentleman here, the lady there, and the gentleman with the moustache and the glasses. Sorry. Taking your word for it.
Yeah, Roy Sanderson, the Rugby Green Party. Now, I think rugby school is a scab on our town and it should be closed down now because they get classes of 5 pupils per class. We get 30 or 40, and we've got a bloody grammar school system in Warwickshire as well, as you said. And that, we should put a bloody bus station on that school rather than leave it as it is. So we need to get rid of public schools now, really. And I was going to make a motion to conference last year, but I'll get sorted for next time. In terms of, in rugby, we had a big campaign to see the inequalities in the town against academies. The person next to me, Lorna, was the parent who led the campaign, working with the NUT against the local school, a village school effectively, being given to be run by the Reach 2, an academy company based in London. So a school in rugby is run by a company based in London. And that's an absolute disgrace, and parents lost their rights to, etc. The other thing is, in terms of campaigning, which is what the Green Party should be going out and doing, can I suggest that people visit the Green Party trade union store and particularly think about building the anti-academic campaign in their area, but also, but also think about becoming a trade union liaison officer in your local Green Party or the regional Green Party itself. Because we need to build links to trade unions.
On to the next question. Thank you.
That's it, thank you.
All right, thanks. And
Hello, I'm Birmingham, Sheffield Green Party. I'm employed as a PSHE teacher, and I'm embarrassed to say that I teach an incredibly inadequate sex education curriculum. When I've changed the schemes of work, I've been reprimanded at school for doing so, changing the school's policies, and so on. What can I do? What can other teachers do? What can the Green Party do? What can the unions do to actually convince my head teachers, my senior leaders, other teachers in school that actually what I do is important and what we do isn't good enough at the moment, and how we're going to get over that? Thank you.
thank you.
Hi, Brian Hyde, the Green Party. We've seen, governments after governments trying to curb trade union power, and really, NUT and Natalie White and all our trade unions have been wonderful for standing up for teachers and students. And really, I wanted to ask, we've got a lot of anti-trade union laws and a lot of curbs on, your right to stand up for students and teachers. What can we do to support NUT and make sure that it is able to stand up for its members and stand up for students?
Thank you very much.
Well, the support of parents and the wider community and school students themselves is absolutely vital if those of us in the teachers and other school workers unions are going to be able to effectively challenge this governance policies, and to ensure that the next government doesn't actually leave in place most of the pillars of, that Michael Gove has erected. So I would like to see, and it's certainly something we're working towards in Birmingham and in many other parts of the country, between now and the election, a series of public meetings that bring together parents, the community, and school workers and unions, in order that we can develop and agree on the key policies that we want to see the next government implemented. We need a travelling roadshow around the country of people who are prepared to support those sorts of meetings, and we need to build real local public campaigns in order to put pressure on parties as we come up to the election. So I hope you'll all take part in it.
Well, I think that sort of partly answered also in a way that you need local support, you need parents to understand. But I did just also want to, this is an issue that's very close to my own heart, and it's also worth raising a point about Green Party policy, is that we don't believe in a national curriculum. We don't think that should be imposed from the centre. What we do say is there should be certain rights that every child should have to know about. And what you're probably not being allowed to teach are some of the things that kids should be able to know about, and know about early enough, which is one of the really important issues. And I'm just going to very briefly finish with a story, because I think it's something that just so horrifies me. I was on the doorstep talking to a teacher who was saying that she knew of this girl, who had started menstruating and thought she was dying, had no education about what was happening to her own body. And that can be happening in the 21st century is just absolutely horrifying. And so we have to say, ultimately this is actually a human rights issue. Everyone has the right to know about their own body, to know how it works at an appropriate stage. And that means, and one of the key issues, that means starting a lot earlier than a lot of parents or communities want to accept. And that's actually where, at some point you do start to run into some conflicts. And I entirely agree with all of the local education panels, community consultation and all the rest of it. But there also needs to be some central statement of every child should have the right to understand how their own body works and understand things that affect their relationships and all of that. And so there does need to be some laying down from the centre of some real basic rights, and that then has to interact with the local decision making, and that's quite often quite tough.
Both themes in this round of questioning are, I agree, to do with rights. We have a government that has removed protection against unfair dismissal. And when it was reported in the press, you would have thought they weren't doing that. This was protection against unfair dismissal. And so rights are really important, and they were hard-won rights, and we need perhaps again to tell the stories of what these rights are. There's a really good thing on YouTube, which is What Have the Unions Ever Done for Us? And it's really hysterical, it's very brief, and it's great to use in meetings. But in terms of the sex and relationships education, I got this from the Massachusetts Teachers Organisation, and it just says these are the things that we have to do. They all intersect. It's about engaging. And I'm going to end with one of the things I started with, and that is what you've described is an attack on the professionalism of teachers. Sex and relationships education, Warwickshire even now just calls it relationships education because obviously there's no sex in Warwickshire. If it's done in a professional way, by people who are properly qualified, nothing will happen in that lesson that is detrimental to children. And that's what you actually have to say. So teaching about, for example, LGBT, you can't. It's not about sex. It's about being lesbian, gay, bisexual or transgender. And so it's about bringing it back to the professionalism of teachers. Teachers saying, this scheme is inadequate, talking to the governors about it, talking to the parents about it. I had a taxi driver, a Muslim taxi driver, who was really worried about sex education because he found out I was a teacher and he was giving me the lift from Birmingham International to home. And I hope, reassured him by the end of the journey that this wasn't going to be anything that would be done without parents knowing what was going on and so on. It's about us all working together. It's complicated, but it's exciting, and together we can make a real difference.
Thank you. We've run out of time now, so thank you very much to the panel. Thanks to you all very much for coming, and just to say we're going to be here for the rest of the day. We've got a table just through there, so if you want to continue the conversation, come over this afternoon. So thanks again.